Hey. Hey, Ebony. Sorry, I'm like, YouTube wasn't being what the problem was. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So, hey, Pebbles. How are you, darling? Everybody doing okay today? Everybody safe? Uh, I don't think Nita be on. Her power's been going on and off. She lives down in Florida, and hey, Miss Shirley, and her phone's only staying half charged most of the time right now because the power keeps going on and off. So she will probably not be on tonight. If she is, it won't be for long. And you have to excuse my little pigtails here today. I just get them up out of my face. I look like a Care Bear on crack. Care Bear on crack. Something. Oh my goodness, it's been raining here off and on all day. Nothing major, but just makes it drizzly and kind of. Well, she gonna make a liar out of me every time. Nina, go away. I told him you wouldn't be on here because of the storm and the rain. My hair's at that in between stage and it's driving me to let it grow. He's standing on my ears. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started before my yawning gets out of control. I don't know why it does this. Uh, Maybe the lights. Speaking of, I'm get my glasses on so I can read this. And write it. I know I look old now. Okay, so it's called Win in Spain by Miss Ebony McMillan, or E.S. McMillan, as we all know. And I'll give you a little synopsis here. This is Jilted. What should have been the happiest day Calvin Walker experienced ended up being the absolute worst. The love of his life left him waiting at the altar without so much as a Dear John letter. That bitch. With the prodding of his best friend, Calvin decides to not let his honeymoon go to waste. He needs a fresh start, and what better place to get it than in Spain? Will a little bit of Spanish flavor be enough to mend Calvin's broken heart? Ebony, do I get to speak some Spanish tonight? I can read Spanish pretty good, and I do pretty good on Spanish. Well, hello, Miss Olivia. Long time no see. Okay, I'm not even good. I mean, I can read Spanish and say Spanish, but I'm not like fluent in it. And but I do a whole lot better than I do in French. All right, chapter one. Today's the day I am going to marry the woman of my dreams. I thought to myself as I stared out the window and into the clouds that decorated the skies outside. The sun was bright. Yeah, you got the energy to be yawning on them. Y'all, I had tea. I had. All right, I'm doing a side note. My squirrels are in there. My squirrels are awake again. I hope they go to sleep soon. Um, Yesterday for supper, my man brought me, Big Daddy brought me home Arby's with a sweet tea, and I drank it. And when I drink sweet tea anymore, and I'm a Southern girl. I'm from Georgia. And I just soon have sweet tea running through my veins as I would blood, y'all. You just don't understand. It's like nectar from the gods. And it keeps me awake right now. It was like Mike came to bed at like 1 o'clock last night, and I was still awake. And I had to get up at 7 o'clock this morning to work. And I was like, no! Tossed and turned and tossed and turned. And I know better than to drink tea. He brought me a small one though, and I thought, oh, that won't be so bad because I'm usually drinking one this size. Yeah, no. I got to figure out how I can drink tea. And see, the thing that is, this is lemonade. This is Country Time lemonade. It's got the sugar in it. It ain't the sugar. I can drink coffee. It don't get me awake. So what is it with tea that keeps me awake that coffee or sugar doesn't? I don't get it. So, okay, back to the thing. Today's the day I'm going to marry the woman of my dreams, I thought to myself as I stared out the window and into the clouds that decorated the sky outside. The sun was bright and the warm air inviting. It was the perfect day for a wedding. My wedding to the woman of my dreams. I couldn't help the smile that pulled at my lips as thoughts of Meredith in her dress danced through my head. Her long brown hair with flowers woven through the strands, and her mother's wedding dress that had been altered to fit her slim frame like a glove. I have been waiting for over 2 years for this day. Son, son, my mother's timid voice sounded from the doorway. Quickly standing up and turning around, the look of unease and sadness etched on her face answered the unasked question that was hanging in the air between us. She's not coming. Tumbled from my lips as my smile faded and tears that I didn't even know were there started flowing. A cold chill passed through me and I felt my knees go weak. Calvin, I'm so sorry, my mother said as she rushed into the small room that I had used to get dressed. The sound of her rustling dress and clacking heels filled the space, ridding the silence that threatened to swallow me up. Wiping the tears that were rolling down my face, I let myself be embraced by the only woman who has never let me down or broken my heart. Mama, I whispered into her shoulder. Shh, you don't have to say a word, she soothed as she started tracing small, comforting circles on my back. The gentle motions brought back memories of when I was a little boy and was upset about something. My mom would wrap me up in her arms and trace little circles on my back until I was feeling better. It didn't matter how much time it took, she wouldn't stop until I cried my last tear. Why would she do this to me? I cried into the only woman who had always been there for me and never let me down. Baby, I don't know, my mother replied as she continued to hold me. Mama, I said as tears continued to fall down my face. My heart was shattering with each tear that fell, and it felt like it would never end. I know, my mother soothed as she held me. She was being so strong for me, and I was so thankful that she was there for me to lean on. Um, I'm sorry to interrupt. Devin, my best friend and best man, said quietly from the doorway, taking a tiny, timid step into the room. The guests are starting to get restless. Looking up and seeing the pity on my best friend's face, my heart shattered even more. I wanted the pain to stop, even if it meant that my life ended. This was too much. Turning to look at the man who she considered a second son, why don't you stay here with Calvin and help him get changed? I will handle the guest. My mother's voice took on a familiar tone that everyone knew meant no arguing. She was springing into action to save the day the best way that she could. Yes, ma'am. Devin slowly started to grab my street clothes out of the bag lying on the floor next to the full-sized mirror that was hanging on the wall. The same mirror that I stared into while I was getting dressed in the black suit that had started to burn my skin. I wanted it off and as far away from me as humanly possible. Sensing my discomfort and anguish, "Here, Calvin, let's get you changed into these." Holding out the clothes that I was supposed to wear to start a new adventure with my new wife, he looked at me with a sadness in his eyes that I never thought I would see directed toward me. He felt bad for me, and it was written all over his face. I was the man that we cracked jokes about over beers and pizza. I was the sucker that I never wanted to be. "Please don't leave. Please don't leave me," I said quietly as I looked at my mother. I didn't want to lose the feeling of safety that I found in her arms. She was the only person who could help me right now, and I couldn't bear the thought of her leaving me, even if it was only for a few minutes. I may fall apart if left alone. Placing a gentle kiss on my forehead as she pulled away from me. "I'll be right back before you can even miss me. Baby, you aren't alone. Devin is here with you," turning her attention to Devin. "Don't let anyone through that door until I get back." "Okay," Devin says it quickly moved out of her way. Stopping and turning to look at me, my mother smiled, then blew me a kiss. "Calvin, I promise that everything will be okay. She didn't deserve you," my mother said before turning back around and making her way out of the small room, making sure to close the door behind her. She left me, my shattered heart and soul with Devin. She might well have locked me in the solitary jail cell. I never felt as alone and broken in my whole life as I did in this moment. How could the love of my life not even bother to show up to our wedding? Sitting on a stool at the Yellow Lemon, I welcomed the darkness of the small club. The evening rush hadn't started yet, and there were only a few people littered throughout the space. "Can I get a vodka and keep them coming?" I asked as I slammed my wallet and phone on the bar in front of me. Not even bothering to look at the man behind the bar, I let my head hang and my eyes fall closed. "Hey, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be dancing the night away with Meredith?" Rob, the bartender, asked with confusion laced in his voice. I gotta scoot up. I feel like I'm leaning over. "It's a long story," Devin butted in. "Oh, Devin. It's a long story," Devin butted in. "Just give the man what he needs. Oh, and put it on my tab." Sliding onto the seat next to me, Devin rested a comforting hand on my still trembling shoulder. "Do I even want to know?" Rob asked as he quickly grabbed two glasses from the stack of clean glasses he was setting up for the evening. "She didn't show up," Devin whispered. "Oh, shit." Rob exclaimed as he reached up and grabbed a skinny bottle off the top shelf of the bar. Tonight's on me." "Thanks. I think it's gonna be a long one. Leave the bottle for us." Devin reached out and grabbed the offered bottle from Rob and started pouring us drinks. "What did I do wrong?" I asked as I tossed back the clear liquid, letting the alcohol burn my throat. On its way down, I slammed the now empty glass on the bar. The clear liquid did nothing to help heal my broken heart. I just hoped that it would help me forget, at least for a little bit, the pain that was taking up residence in my heart. I still love her and want her to be my wife. The admission sounded strange coming from my mouth after everything that had transpired on what should have been the happiest day of my life. "Vincey, I bet you are loving this with all these voices. And yes, I know it's freezing up. It'll come out in the wash, but guys, I apologize. The weather's the only thing I know. I have no idea. YouTube was acting up. It didn't even want me getting on tonight. No, cold water will make me curl in on myself, I'm afraid, Miss Olivia. It needs to be warm. It needs to be hot. Um, You didn't do anything wrong. This is on her, Devin assured me as he poured me another drink. Do you have any idea what your next move is? Drinking this day away, I informed him as I downed the drink he just refreshed for me. Sorry, you're so silly. Chapter 2. I think you've had enough, Rob said as he reached for the empty glass sitting beside me. Do you need me to call you a cab? I'll tell you when I've had enough, I spit out. I'll tell you when I've had enough, I spit out, trying to focus on Rob. I reached out for the glass that he was just moved away from me. I'll make sure he gets home, Devin quickly said as he reached in his pocket and threw a thick wad of cash on the bar. Pushing the money back toward Devin, I told you tonight was on me. Just make sure that he gets home safely. I do not want or need his mother coming after me if something happens to him. Robert Rob said with a serious voice as he started to wipe down the bar with a dingy cloth rag. Thanks, Rob. I owe you one. Devin sighed as he stood up from the stool he had been occupying for the past 3 hours. Turning to look at me, a look of pity washed across his face. Don't you dare look at me like that. I am just fine. I slurred as I turned and tried to focus on Devin's face. The, the room felt like it was spinning, and I instantly regretted demanding the third bottle of vodka. Oh, I'd have passed that probably after the first one. Devin switched to cola and then water about halfway into the night. I should have followed his lead. He had never led me wrong before, except when he encouraged my relationship with Meredith. Taking a deep breath before standing up, I instantly regretted my decision. Rob, a little help. Devin quickly called out as I fell to the floor and landed on my face. Easy, Rob said as he bent down to help lift me off the ground. Just leave me, I stuttered as the two men lifted me off the ground and placed me back on the stool that I had just vacated a few seconds ago. Isn't Tessa waiting for you? I instantly regretted the words that fell from my mouth. It wasn't Rob or even Tessa, his girlfriend's fault that I was hurting right now. They had absolutely nothing to do with my failed wedding and missing fiance. Your mom would have my ass if I just left you here, Devin said with a chuckle. He was never good at comic relief, and I wished that he would have just stuck to being my drinking buddy. Mine too, Rob added as he made his way back around the bar. Do you need me to call you guys a car or something? Looking at me. Do you mind if we stay here while you close up and then I will walk him home? I think the cool air will do him some good, Devin asked as he sat back down on the stool next to me. I think that's a good idea, Rob said as he placed a chilled bottle of water in front of me. Looking at the bottle, I couldn't help the tears that started to flow from my eyes. Meredith drank this brand, I sobbed as I pushed the bottle away from me. I didn't want anything that reminded me of her anywhere near me. It was too soon. Taking a deep breath. Maybe a car would be better. Devin sighed as he looked around the club. It was quickly emptying as the house lights started to flicker on. The musician who had been playing for the past few hours was almost done packing up his saxophone and had someone helping him move his stuff to the back door of the club. She didn't even bother to leave a note, I started as images of the love of my life started to float through my head. Come on, man, don't do this here, Devin pleaded as he looked around the club. The hum of background noise seemed to stop as everyone seemed to face their attention on me and my sob story. Let the man grieve, Miss Maybelle, the owner of the Yellow Lemon, said as she plopped down on the stool next to me, pulling me into a warm, comforting embrace. You are allowed to be sad and don't let anyone tell you anything different. I don't know what I did wrong, I sobbed, resting my head on her chest. I welcomed the comfort that she offered. Baby, you didn't do anything wrong, Maybelle said as she tightened her hold on me. I don't think Meredith was truly ready for everything that you were. She was in over her head and didn't know how to tell you. She could have told me anything, I said as the endless supply of tears continued to flow down my face. I love her. I know you do, baby. What do I do now? Do I call her and try to fix this? I needed someone to tell me what to do next. I had no idea what I was supposed to do after the woman I loved and planned on spending the rest of my life with didn't even bother to show up to our wedding. A wedding that she spent the better part of 2 years planning and making sure that every last detail was perfect. Honestly, I don't think she deserves you, Devin said quietly from his seat. Shh. Now is not the time for that kind of talk, Maybelle insisted, rubbing my back just like my mother. You need to get him home. Can you stay the night with him to make sure that he's okay? Sitting up and looking at Maybelle. I want to be alone. No, baby. Now is not the time for you to be alone. Trust me. I have been through more heartbreaks than you could even imagine. You need your friends and family more than ever right now, Maybelle wisely said as she gently pushed the water bottle closer to me. Here, drink some of this. Admitting defeat, I took the offered water bottle and took a sip of the cold beverage. The smooth liquid felt so good as it traveled down my dry throat, letting the now empty bottle drop back down onto the bar top. I looked at Maybelle. Will it always hurt like this? I needed to know the answer. I needed to know if I was going to feel like a broken and battered shell of my former self. No, baby, this too shall pass with time, she reassured with a kind smile. It hurts so bad, I admitted. I needed to stop hurting. The tears kept falling as what was left of my heart continued to break. Get him home and keep an eye on him, Maybelle instructed as she placed a gentle hand on my back. Ebony, I don't know I don't know where this is at. Is this part of that South Carolina bunch you were always giving me? Because I always put a southern spin on your stuff. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because they're sweet, but I just like that southern. They just read good southern. Chapter 3, 3 days later. Well, hello, sunshine, my mother sang out from the door. Well, hello, sunshine, my mother sang out from my doorway. Hesitating for a moment before coming into my bedroom, she came in and sat down at the edge of my bed. I've missed you. What? I asked as I sat up and rubbed the sleep from my eyes. Opening them slowly to avoid being blinded by the bright sunlight that was streaming in through the open blinds, I focused my gaze on my mother. It's been 3 days, Calvin, my mother said gently as she looked at me with gentle eyes. Looking around my room, I noticed my overnight bag sitting by the door and my clothes strewn about the floor. How? The words fell from my lips as my eyes focused on the clock resting on the nightstand. Taking a deep breath, my mother rested her hand on my leg. Son, it's been 3 days since the wedding. As the memories of being abandoned by the woman who I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with came flooding back, I threw the blankets off my naked body and jumped up from the bed. Meredith, I called out, hoping this was all just a bad dream. I'm so sorry, Calvin, my mother said as she stood up and averted her eyes. I'll give you a moment to get dressed. Are you hungry? I can cook. Walking toward my open bedroom door, she stopped and started picking up my clothes that had been discarded. Leave it, I instructed her as I made my way to the bathroom that was connected to my room. I just want to help. Can you make any? Can you make any of this? Let me try this again. Can you make any of this make sense? I asked, already knowing what she couldn't. The only person who could fix this situation was Meredith, and she was MIA. I am here for you. The familiar words tumbled from my mother's lips as she stood up and walked out of my room. Closing the door behind her, I could smell the familiar scent of lavender hovering in the air. My mother always smelled of lavender, and I knew that everything was going to be okay when the scent was in the air. I needed her to make everything better, and I wasn't sure if she could this time. Hey, anyone home? Devin's voice called out from my front hallway. We're in here, my mother called out, alerting him to our location. Grabbing the frying pan off the hot stove, my mother made her way over to the kitchen table that I was sitting at. Do you want eggs? Hey, man, Devin said as he made his way into the room. It smells amazing in here. Placing a quick kiss on my mother's cheek as he walked past her, Devin dropped into the seat next to me. Yes, I said as I stared out the window in front of me. I didn't know how the sun could shine while my heart was shattered into a billion tiny pieces. How you holding up? Devin asked as my mother placed a plate in front of him. How do you think I'm holding up? I snapped as I turned to look at my best friend. The woman that I love and want to spend the rest of my life with didn't even bother to show up to our wedding. You what? I spit out. I knew that my anger was being hurled at the wrong person. He didn't deserve to be treated like this. Calvin, don't you dare sit here and treat Devin like this. He didn't do this, my mother demanded as she placed a hand on my shoulder. Her touch seemed to be magical and instantly calmed me. It's okay, Miss Walker. I can take it, Devin said as he placed a hand on my other shoulder. I know you can take it. You shouldn't have to. Oh, I know you can take it. You shouldn't have to. You did not do this, my mother said as she slowly sat down in the empty chair to my left. Taking a deep breath, I focused my gaze at the shining sun outside. I'm sorry, I whispered. You have nothing to be sorry for, Devin said as he gave my shoulder a squeeze. Feeling the tears welling up in my eyes, I willed them not to fall. I knew that I had shed enough tears for the life that I should have been living with Meredith. What am I supposed to do now? I asked the two people who were literally holding me up. I already canceled the hotel reservations that you made. Devin jumped in. I was so lucky to have him in my corner. Thank you, my mother said as she moved her hand from my shoulder to my back and started tracing small, comforting circles. I couldn't cancel the actual honeymoon, Devin admitted as his gaze fell to the plate in front of him. I will take care of that, I said as I tore my gaze away from the window. Looking down at the plate of my food my mother prepared for me, I took a deep breath. Feeling my chest fill up with air, I let my eyes air. I let my eyes fall closed as the pain from my broken heart grew. I will handle it, my mother said softly as she continued to rub circles on my back. Devin, help yourself. I made plenty of food. Thank you, Devin said as he removed his hand from my shoulder and looked at all the food spread out in front of him. Boy, I said eat, my mother sassed as she looked at him with a smile on her face. Yes, ma'am. Reaching toward the plate in front of him, Devin started to scoop food onto his plate. Looking over at my friend, Thank you for taking care of the hotel. The words came out a whisper as I struggled to keep the tears from falling. Dropping the spoon that he was holding back onto the plate, Devin turned to look at me. Calvin, you are my brother, and I will do anything that I can to help out. I wish that I could have taken care of canceling your trip to Spain. I think you should go, my mother interrupted Devin. Huh? I asked, not sure what I had heard her correct. Not sure that I had heard her correctly. Looking up at me. I've been thinking about it since Devin told us that he wasn't able to cancel the trip. Calvin, maybe there is a reason he wasn't able to cancel it for you. I think you should go. What? I asked, not sure that I was hearing my mother correctly. Son, listen to me. You need a change of scenery and to clear your head and decide what your next move is going to be, my mother said, her voice full of certainty that she was doing the right thing. Are you sure, Miss W? Devin asked. There is nothing here but heartache and sadness. If he stays here, I'm afraid he's going to eat him. It's going to eat him alive. I want him to go someplace new and breathe, my mother explained. Do you want me to go with you? Devin asked. I can get the time off. No, tumbled from my lips, looking at the man who had been by my side for as long as I could remember. I need to do this on my own. Are you sure? Devin asked. He will be just fine, my mother injected. Son, he needs to do this. I'm going to Spain, I said out loud. Hearing the words come out of my mouth, I couldn't stop the sadness from washing over me from the realization that nothing was turning out the way it was supposed to. I was supposed to be starting a new life with Meredith, and we were supposed to be embarking on this adventure together. You're going to Spain, my mother said as she leaned over and placed a kiss on my cheek. Chapter 4. You sure about this? Devin asked as he pulled the handle of my suitcase and started to pull it out of my apartment behind me. I'm not sure about anything, I admitted as I closed and locked the door behind me, following him down the hallway toward the main entrance of my building. I stopped at the front desk. Looking around for the doorman, I realized that he was probably on break. I will let them know to hold your mail for the next 2 weeks, Devin said as he held the front door open for me. Thank you. Looking around the empty lobby of my apartment building, my eyes landed on a piece of paper that was taped to my mailbox. What's this? What's this? I asked out loud as I made my way across the room to the wall of mailboxes. Stopping in front of mine, I grabbed the paper and stared at the familiar handwriting. Feeling like the air was being snatched from my throat, my eyes started to water as I stared at my name scribbled across the paper in the purple ink. Purple is her favorite color. Yo, Calvin, we have to go if you're going to make your flight, Devin called out to me, snatching me out of the wormhole of thoughts that I was about to fall down. I'm coming, I replied as I stared at the paper in my hands. Taking a deep breath, I continued to stare at my name written across the folded piece of paper in the familiar script that used to make me smile. Shaking my head to clear the thoughts that were calling to me, I folded the paper, stuffed it in my pocket before turning around and made my way toward Devin and the door that he was holding open for me. You okay? He asked as I stomped past him and out of the building. Fine, I huffed as I refused to look at my friend and made my way to his waiting car. Are you sure? He asked as I climbed into the car and slammed the door behind me. There was no hiding my sudden mood shift from Devin, and I hoped that he would just give me the space that I so desperately needed and not push to find out what was waiting for me in my pocket. Pulling the seatbelt tightly across my body, I leaned back into the seat and let the headrest swaddle my now throbbing head as Devin put my suitcase into the trunk. Why now? I asked out loud to no one in particular as the letter burned a hole in my pocket. My curiosity got the better of me, and I pulled the folded piece of paper with my name on it out of my pocket. What's that? Devin asked as he opened the driver's side door and slid into his seat. Nothing, I said as I quickly shoved the paper back into its resting place in my pocket and turned my head to look out the window. The familiar sights of Allenville stared back at me as I willed my thoughts to not to wander to the one who caused all the pain that I was now drowning in. Putting the key into the ignition and starting up the car. Meredith, Devin quietly asked as he pulled into traffic. How did you know? I asked as Devin drove to the airport. The look on your face, he admitted as he merged into the highway. What could she possibly have to say to me? You will never know until you read it, Devin said as he offered me a bit of peace by turning on the radio. The smooth sounds of Star Logan's latest release floated from the radio and filled the quiet of the car. I was thankful for the distraction. Turning my eyes to the clock located in the center of the car, we are making great time. The words sounded foreign. I didn't recognize my own voice. Well, we left with plenty of time to spare, Devin said with a chuckle as he followed the signs that guided us to Allenville Regional Airport. Are you sure you don't want me to go with you? I think my mother's right. I need to do this on my own and come to terms with what happened, if that is possible, I said as the familiar sights of my hometown whizzed by. You do know if you change your mind, I'm a phone call away, Devin said as he took the exit for the airport. Following the flow of traffic, the familiar building came into view and I took a deep breath. You okay? Devin's voice was laced with concern. She just left me waiting for her like a chump. The car pulled into a parking spot and Devin shut off the engine, turning my gaze to my friend. What did I do? I asked my friend. Pulling the key out of the ignition, Devin rested his hand Good night, Miss Pebbles. Vincey, I think it's got to do with the weather and the storm. Because remember, I'm not on fiber optic. I'm on DSL or whatever you call it. Okay. Now, I've been busy enough today to know. Uh, Pulling the key from the ignition, Devin rested his hand on the idle steering wheel. The sounds of smooth jazz floated from the speakers. Turning to look at me. This is not you. Whatever caused Meredith to leave you waiting for her is her issue. You are a good man, and she is damn lucky to have your love and affection. Then why didn't she have the decency to at least pick up a phone and call me? I haven't heard anything from her, and then all of a sudden she leaves a note on my mailbox. Who does that? I knew that question was going to haunt me until I got a real answer. I needed to know what caused her to not even show up to the beginning of the rest of our lives. Come on, we need to get you on that plane, Devin said as he opened up his door, causing the music to instantly stop and the overhead light in the car to pop on. I don't know if I can do this, I admitted as I watched Devin climb out of the car, stopping and leaning back in the car. Just put one foot in front of the other. The simple instructions reminded me of my mother, and I couldn't help the smile that pulled at my lips. I had heard those words so many times from her and never really knew what she meant. Always assumed that I was just putting one foot in front of the other. But I was so wrong. I was just floating through life. I can do this, I said more to myself as I unclicked the seatbelt that was securing me in my place. Opening my door, I slowly stood up and let the warm air envelop me. Taking a deep breath, I looked around and saw a plane getting ready to take off through the fences a few yards away. Calvin, Devin called out to me as he grabbed my suitcase out of his trunk. I can do this, I repeated as I closed my door and made my way around the car. Grabbing the suitcase from Devin's hand, I turned around and put one foot in front of the other until I was walking through the sliding doors of the airport. Chapter 5. Flight 749 is now boarding first-class passengers at Gate 22. A female voice rang out from the speakers located around the waiting area that Devin and I were waiting in. "They're calling for you," Devin said as he stood up from the plastic chair that he was occupying. Bending down to grab my suitcase that was waiting on the ground, I quickly jumped up from my seat and grabbed the case. "Thank you for everything," I said with a shaky voice. "I don't know what I would have done if you weren't there." "You would have been just fine," Devin said. "Last chance." "Last chance for what?" I questioned, not really sure where he was going. "It is not too late for me to run over to the ticket counter and grab a ticket," Devin said with a smile on his face. "I always wanted to go to Spain." "Maybe next time," I said as I started walking toward the set of double doors that led to the waiting plane. "So, you plan on getting left by a woman again?" Devin questioned with a chuckle as he fell into step with me. Balling my free hand into a tight fist, I reached out and punched my friend in the arm. "That was a low blow." "I was teasing," he replied as he rubbed his arm. "I know," I said as I stopped. Looking at my friend, I was so thankful for him. "Thank you for everything." "You don't have to thank me for being here for you," Devin informed me quietly as he fell back into step toward the doors. "Tickets, please. Please have your tickets out," a sultry voice called out from in front of us. "Wow," Devin exclaimed as his eyes landed on the woman in the deep red blazer who was standing in front of the double doors. She worked for the airline and was collecting tickets before letting people walk through the doors leading to the airplane. "She is smoking hot." Getting a good look at the woman with the sultry voice, I felt a twinge of pain shoot through my body. She was indeed beautiful with her caramel skin, curly brown hair, deep brown eyes, and full red lips. She had curves in all the right places and a smile on her face that made me want to get to know her. I couldn't explain the pain that I felt or the guilt that took root in the pit of my stomach. It's okay to find it's okay for you to find happiness on this trip, Devin whispered as he got closer to the woman taking tickets. "It's too soon." Slowing down so that I didn't bump into the person in front of me, I tried to stop the thoughts that were running through my head. "Tickets, please," she said to the couple standing in front of me. As they handed her two slips of paper, she smiled at them. "I hope you have a great flight." Taking a step, I held out my own ticket and hoped that she didn't notice my trembling hand. "Your ticket, sir?" she said to Devin. "I'm just here to see my friend off," he said as he clapped me on the back. "This is as far as you can go without a ticket," she kindly informed him, looking at me as she returned the ticket to my waiting hand. "Have a good flight." "Thank you," I said as I took the offered ticket and turned to Devin. "I will call you when I land. Please look out for my mother while I'm away." "Only if you promise to have a good time and not stress over things and people that you have no control over." "I will try," I promised as I leaned into my friend and gave him a quick hug. "Have a great trip," he said as he stepped to the side so that I could make my way through the double doors and onto the plane. "Excuse me, can I offer you something to drink?" a familiar voice asked as I snapped my eyes open. Looking around, I realized that I wasn't in my room. "I am so sorry to disturb you." Focusing on the woman who was standing beside my seat with a rolling cart. "What? What? What?" I asked her. "Can I offer you something to drink?" she repeated with a friendly smile. "Do I know you?" I met as I rubbed the sleep out of my eyes. We met 3 hours ago when I checked your ticket before boarding." The smile on her face was so friendly, I couldn't help returning it with a smile of my own. 3 hours? That's how long it's been? I asked, sitting up in my seat. "That's it," she said as she patiently waited for my drink order. What's your name? I asked, not sure where the question came from. Carmen, she replied nervously as she looked at me. I couldn't help returning her gaze as my desire to get to know this beautiful woman grew. It felt wrong. My heart still belonged to Meredith, and I needed to figure out what came next for me, especially after everything that just happened. That's a beautiful name, tumbled from my lips before I even had a chance to realize what I was saying. Thank you. Her eyes turned to the floor as she shifted from one foot to the other. I was clearly making her nervous. Are you thirsty? What do you have? I asked, trying to bring some normalcy back to the conversation. I still had a little over 5 hours left in the flight and didn't want to make it uncomfortable for myself or Carmen. What are you in the mood for? She asked as she returned her gaze back to me. There was something about the way the words rolled off her tongue that demanded my full attention. Taking a deep breath, do you have something that could fix a broken heart? Chapter 6. We are about to start our final descent into Madrid. Please buckle your seatbelts, close the folding trays, and return your seats into an upright position. The captain's voice sounded through the speaker above my head. I have to get back to work, Carmen informed me as she jumped up from the seat next to me and started to make her way toward the seats reserved for the crew. Don't leave, I called out as I reached my hand out to the woman who had spent the last few hours rega- regaling me with her adventures. Carmen Martinez was an interesting woman. She was from a small village in Spain and had dreams of becoming a world famous dancer. At the age of 17, she left her home and everyone that she loved to move to New York in hopes of achieving her dreams. Life got in the way and she ended up becoming a flight attendant to make ends meet. This was her final flight and her first trip back home in 18 years. She was like me and didn't know what the future held, but she was ready for whatever came next. As she walked away from me, I instantly missed my new friend. I was selfish and wanted her to stay with me, to hold my hand as I figured out what was next for me. I'm I'm just going to my seat, she called out over her shoulder as she made her way down the aisle quickly. The smile that graced her face instantly made me feel like the broken shards of my heart were eventually going to be okay. The smile that graced a scene. The past few hours flew by as Carmen and I got to know each other. She made me laugh, something that I didn't know I would ever do again. Thoughts of Meredith disappeared from my head as I got lost in the easy conversation that flowed between Carmen and me. There was something so special about this woman. Carmen is special. Let's see. Carmen is special. The woman, the old woman in the seat across the aisle whispered to me as I watched Carmen get comfortable in her seat. I know, I replied as I took a deep breath and leaned back into the comfortable seat. She's been through a lot she's been through a lot, and if her intentions are not pure, leave her. She's been through a lot, and if your intentions are not pure, leave her alone. The warning was harsh, but I knew it was coming from a place of genuine love for Carmen. Do you know Carmen? I asked, wanting to know everything that I could about my new friend. I am her neighbor, she informed me. Oh, small world, I said, trying to make sense of the connection between Carmen and this lady. Carmen is like a daughter to me, and I will not let anyone hurt her, the woman informed me as she leaned forward in her seat. Looking at me, her intense gaze softened. I see so much pain I see so much pain in you. Whoever she was did a number on you. You have no idea, I mumbled as I felt the plane start to descend. I'm sorry if I was I'm sorry if I was harsh, the woman said with a softer tone. My name is Rose, and I have watched over Carmen since she moved to New York. Over the years, she has become one of my children. The smile on Rose's face widened as she talked about Carmen. I could tell that she meant a lot to the older woman. My fiance left me, I admitted. I heard. My heart breaks for you, and I am so sorry that you were hurt. She reached across the aisle and placed her hand on top of mine. The gentle touch felt good and reminded me of my mother. I knew I had to call her as soon as the plane landed to let her know that I had arrived safely. I knew that she was worried about me and wanted to let her know that I was okay. What brings you to Spain? I'm here to clear my head and figure out what comes next for me. I wish you well on your journey. The woman starts as she averts her gaze away from me and toward the front of the plane. Removing her hand from mine, Rose gave a wave toward the front of the plane. Carmen is on a journey of her own and doesn't need any distractions. Her words echoed in my head as I leaned back and let my eyes fall closed. I'm not going to hurt her, I whispered, not sure why I felt the need to inform the stranger of my intentions. I love that girl and will not let anyone hurt her again, Rose whispered back to me. Not sure how this conversation took the turn that it just did, I sat up straight in my seat and turned my body to look at the woman who had just issued a warning to me. I don't know what the future holds for me. I don't know if I will ever see Carmen again after I board this plane. I just know that she has made this first step for me so much easier. I hope my friend is not I hope my friend is not bothering you. Carmen's sweet voice sounded in front of me. I'm just having a conversation, Rose said sweetly as she looked up at Carmen and smiled. Shouldn't you be strapped into your seat? I just wanted to make sure you aren't bothering my new friend, Carmen said as she gave me a sweet smile and a wink. I'm just having a conversation. Go back to your seat and I will see you when we get off the plane. Rose said with a wave. Turning her gaze back to me, Carmen mouthed, I'm sorry, and gave me a smile. It's fine. I love making new friends, and I have been lucky enough to make two. Being nice, Rose, Carmen instructed as she looked at me before turning and returning to her seat. I don't know what the future holds, but I promise that I will not hurt her. I informed Rose. I meant every word as thoughts of Carmen Martinez floating through my head. Alrighty, I'm gonna call it quits there because apparently it's still freezing and the three people that are still hanging on here are probably tired of watching that by now. So, all right, this is When in Spain. It's a short story. I read about half of it tonight, so go get it. It's on Amazon. Is it on Amazon yet, Ebony? Are you still here? Let's see. Well, I'm gonna try to do that without glasses because that can get scary in a weird sort of way. Yes, there it is. $1.99 to buy. $1.99 to buy, and it is a short story. Probably won't take you 2 hours to read it, I'd guess. And those of you that read faster than I do probably do even faster than that. And it's got 4.8 stars out of 5. Whoop, whoop. So go get it. It sounds like it's a countryman novella. So yeah, I know, and it's just getting good. Okay. All right, y'all. Go get it. And then tomorrow night, I have a vampire book tomorrow night. but I don't remember who it is. Well, shucks a rooney. Hold on. Oh, wait a minute. Nope. It's a domesticated by daddy. A diff for Father's Day. That's who I have tomorrow night. Whoop, whoop. Annalise Reynolds. A diff for Father's Day. That's what I'm talking about. A daddy I'd like to have fun with. All right, everybody. Have a great evening. Be safe wherever you are. Those up and down the East Coast, watch out. It's coming your way, and she ain't shooting ice this time. So get ready. And the rest of you, just try to stay cool. Keep out for everybody else. Keep an eye on each other, but stay safe. All righty. Happy reading. Love you guys.